visuals coming in of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. These are his departure visuals. Remember, he's now headed to Moscow in Russia for a 2-day visit, and a lot of significance attached to this visit of the Prime Minister. This is going to be his visit to Russia. It will include discussions on bilateral developments, regional issues of mutual interest. And in fact, the MEA has also been stressing on the significance of the Prime Minister's visit, how it comes after a 3-year gap since the last summit-level meeting between the Russian President and Prime Minister Narendra Modi in 2021. This is when Vladimir Putin was in India. Before that, the Prime Minister last visited Russia in 2019. And live visuals coming in. The Prime Minister is also, in a sense, given an overview of what one can expect from this meeting as far as his departure statement is concerned. As we keep up with these live visuals, let me quickly take in a word from my colleague Siddhant joining us with the latest. Siddhant, if you could quickly elaborate on, his departure statement and what are we to expect the next few hours as we keep up with these live visuals.
Well, that's right. So we are getting these live visuals of Prime Minister embarking on a 3-day visit to Russia and Australia. First bilateral visit of Prime Minister Modi after him taking office for the 3rd time. In fact, in the departure statement, it's very interesting, and I want to quote here. Prime Minister says, and I quote, "I look forward to reviewing all aspects of bilateral cooperation with my friend President Putin and share perspectives on various regional and global issues. We seek to play a supportive role for a peaceful and stable region. This visit will also provide me an opportunity to meet the vibrant Indian community in Russia," unquote. So Prime Minister in his departure statement is again talking about peaceful and peace and stability. Now, in 2022, if you remember, when Prime Minister was in Samarkand to attend SCO summit, he gave this slogan, this call, that this is not an era of war. And perhaps on the sideline of SCO in 2022, he met President Putin. Now, this is for the 2nd time when two leaders are going to meet in 3 years. Both will hold bilateral talks, summit-level talks. And Foreign Secretary Vinay Kwatra, while addressing press conference in Delhi, when he was asked whether Ukraine issue will be taken up during the summit-level talks, so he referred to the Prime Minister's statement during SCO summit in 2022, and he said that all regional and global issues which matter to both the countries will be taken up. So there is a possibility of Ukraine issue coming up. Also, this particular visit is important because it's a long-standing visit. If you remember, EM Jaishankar was in Russia in January. He carried Prime Minister Modi's message for President Putin. And President Putin invited Prime Minister Modi to come to Russia for summit-level talks. There are some complex issues which can only be resolved when two leaders will sit together for a summit-level talk. And this is the reason that there's not only going to be the delegation-level talk, but there is also a restrictive talk. There's a time slot for that as well, in which very close, proximity people would be allowed. So, this time the agenda would be the start of Indians working in Russian army. That is on the top priority, I'm being told. Then payment mechanisms to make it even more better and dynamic. That would be on the agenda. Then there are some bills pertaining to the investments of Indian companies in Russia. That is also something which will be taken up. Then along with that, Vladivostok and Chennai connectivity domain, we can expect outcome. And in fact, international north-south transport corridor, which connects India, Iran and Russia, that particular corridor will also be taken up, and the progress that India has made, especially investing in Shahid Beheshti terminal in Chabahar port, that India would highlight during talks with Russia. So it's a very historic visit, and in terms of messaging also, this visit is important because Prime Minister Modi 1 month back was seen with Western leaders during G7 summit, and within a 1 month's time he's going to Russia. And at this point in time, there is a Washington summit which is happening for the NATO leaders. President Biden is hosting NATO leaders in Washington. So this visit also has got a lot of message that Indian foreign policy is independent. And India believes in respecting privilege and special strategic partners. And that's a message which India wants to send out. Also would like to highlight, if Vladivostok and Chennai connectivity domain sees progress of the day, then there could be a possibility that it could trigger China, because that communication line, sea communication line, passes through South China and East China Sea. So that would really be interesting to see that how China would react to it. And Russia also time and again, sees India's its relations with India independently, and both countries have the ties have deepened. The trade is at $65 billion. The priority for India will also be to reduce the trade imbalance, also to make sure that if India could export more products in agriculture, pharmaceuticals, that is also going to be the top priority of Prime Minister Modi. And the way India has positioned itself after the war in Ukraine, first not condemning Russia out and out, then giving this message to the world that this is not an era of war. And recently, during the Swiss Peace Conference, India backed out and then signed the joint communique, which perhaps sent out a very strong message to the Western world that India's foreign policy is independent, and India looks at issues with its own prism, and nobody can force or perhaps drag India to its side. That was a very clear message that India gave during the Swiss Peace Summit. This time around, Prime Minister Modi is going to hold the 22nd summit-level talks with President Putin. There would be a lot of development, a lot of progress that we could expect tomorrow. Tonight, President Putin is going to host a private dinner for PM Modi. No work, but both leaders will engage at the personal level. Tomorrow, we could expect delegation-level talks in the afternoon, and by evening, we could expect the readouts and the outcomes that we can tell our viewers, the takeaways from PM Modi's visit to Russia. And post that, he's going to, the second leg of his visit is going to be to Austria. For the first time in 40 years, an Indian Prime Minister is going to Austria. And trust me, in Austria visit, there is less strategic relevance, but more to do with business, technology, and innovation.
Okay, all right. And as is being pointed out by several officials, Vinay Kumar, India's ambassador to Russia, for example, also spoke of how a lot has changed around the world since the two leaders last met, but relations between the two countries have only continuously expanded. Siddhant, that's a strong statement that's being sent out by both the sides. And discussions most certainly are going to be taken forward. And like you rightly pointed out, the world is watching. China, United States, there are several key geopolitical players who are very closely watching out for what transpires between the two leaders. Stay on with us, Siddhant. Let me quickly take in a word from Anand Narsimhan joining us live from Moscow. Anand, today, of course, the Prime Minister will be landing in Russia. He's going to be going ahead for the private dinner with President Putin. Tomorrow is when he will be interacting with the Indian community there, as is the case with the Prime Minister's visit to any of these big nations. What's expected on part of Moscow? What plans in place for the Prime Minister's welcome there?
Morning to all our viewers and morning, Kritsween. Let me first tell you where I am. I am at the Svetskaya Street, and this is the Svetskaya Square right behind me. Moscow is steeped in history. Every stone, every building here has a story of its own. So if you are an enthusiast which wants to understand history from whichever perspective and wants to know a city which is really, really old and which has got lots to say, this is one place to visit. And it's buzzing. This is a Monday morning. It's buzzing. People are going to work. The streets are wide and it's business as usual. It looks like Moscow has this entire quiet resolve within it, that it's going to muscle on, it's going to push on. And I think that stems from how President Putin has been. He's been dogged in his pursuit and defense of Russia, Mother Russia, from the Russian perspective. There are multiple worldviews of what is happening with the Russia-Ukraine conflict. A lot of it influenced from the Western prism, but there is a very strong, solid Russian point of view, which perhaps President Putin will place with Prime Minister Narendra Modi when they have that 2-hour dinner this evening between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. Moscow time. Moscow is 2.5 hours behind Bharat right now. So it's about 11:15 in Bharat, and we are at about 8:45 here in Moscow. So that's the time zone difference. But this will be critical for me more than the bilaterals and the engagements that are scheduled for Tuesday. It's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Putin's body language and the warmth with which they receive each other and the warmth with which they see off each other or say good night. That 2 hours is the most critical, because that's a one-on-one engagement between leaders where nothing is off the table, and they will be discussing a lot of things which will not be perhaps officially even the officials won't be aware. A lot of groundwork has been done by the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, Foreign Minister Jaishankar and his team. So there have been a lot of engagements that are going to set up the bedrock, because this is historic. The world is watching. The West is watching very carefully, and that's why Kremlin is also playing up the amping up the psyops, saying, see, the West is watching us with jealousy as Modi visits us. Bharat is on the international table, geopolitics. It's arrived there, and PM